Every dollar you've ever earned carried a message you never heard. Not from your parents, not from your teachers, not from the financial advisors who sold you their carefully packaged wisdom. The message wasn't about budgets or investment portfolios. It was about something far more fundamental, something that lives in the space between your thoughts and your actions, something that determines whether wealth flows toward you or away from you before you even open your wallet. We've been taught to manage money as if it were a purely external game. Save 10%, diversify your portfolio, cut back on coffee. But here's what no one mentions in those conversations. Money doesn't move according to spreadsheets alone. It moves according to the story you tell yourself about what you deserve, what's possible, and who you are. And that story, written in the silent language of your subconscious mind, has been running on repeat since before you earned your first paycheck. If you've been here before, you know what we do. Hit subscribe, because what we explore here isn't surface level. This is about rewiring the operating system, not just updating the apps. Think about the last time you received money. Maybe it was your salary, maybe a bonus, maybe a gift. What was your first thought? Not your first action, your first thought. Did you feel relief? Anxiety? A quiet voice whispering that it wouldn't last? That's not random. That's your money script playing out in real time, and it's been directing your financial life with more power than any budget you've ever created. The best money advice you'll ever hear has nothing to do with what you do with money and everything to do with what you believe about money before you ever touch it. Because we don't act our way into new thinking. We think our way into new acting. And until we address the thinking, the acting remains a performance, exhausting and unsustainable. Here's the truth that financial education deliberately ignores. Your relationship with money is a mirror of your relationship with yourself. When you undercharge for your work, you're not just making a business mistake. You're speaking a belief about your value into existence. When you sabotage your savings with impulsive purchases, you're not just being undisciplined. You're acting out a script that says you don't deserve security. When you avoid looking at your bank account, you're not just being avoidant. You're reinforcing a belief that you can't handle reality. Carl Jung wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Nowhere is this more true than with money. We call it bad luck when we're passed over for promotions. We call it circumstances when we can't seem to save. We call it the economy when our income stagnates. But underneath all of that is a set of beliefs so deeply embedded that we don't even recognize them as beliefs. We experience them as facts. Let me take you somewhere specific. Imagine you're in a negotiation. Maybe you're asking for a raise, maybe you're pricing your services, maybe you're discussing a business deal. In that moment, right before you name your number, there's a feeling. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but it's there. It's the feeling that determines whether you ask for what you're worth or what you think they'll accept. That feeling isn't about market rates or competitive analysis. It's about whether you believe, at the deepest level, that you deserve to be compensated fully for your value. And here's what makes this so insidious. That belief was formed long before you entered that negotiation. It was formed in childhood, when you heard your parents argue about money. It was formed when you asked for something and were told no, we can't afford it, accompanied by a tone of shame or resignation. It was formed when you watched how the adults around you spoke about wealthy people, whether with admiration or resentment, teaching you that wealth was either virtuous or corrupt. All of those moments, seemingly unrelated to your current financial situation, built the foundation upon which your entire money life now rests. Viktor Frankl reminded us that between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. But most of us don't even know the space exists when it comes to money. The stimulus happens, receiving money or spending money or thinking about money, and the response is automatic. We're not choosing. We're executing a program written by a version of ourselves that no longer exists, trying to navigate a financial reality that version never imagined. So what's the advice? What's the thing no one told you? It's this: before you try to earn more money, save more money, or invest more money, you need to rewrite your money story. Not as a nice-to-have personal development exercise, but as the foundational work that makes everything else possible. You need to excavate the beliefs you carry about scarcity, abundance, worthiness, and safety. You need to identify the moment when you decided that money was dangerous or noble or scarce or available. You need to find the place where your current financial behavior is simply the logical extension of an old decision that no longer serves you. This isn't abstract psychology. This is mechanics. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine, and it's exceptionally good at finding evidence for whatever you believe. If you believe money is hard to come by, your brain will filter your experience to show you all the ways money is hard to come by. You'll notice the expenses, the obstacles, the people who seem to have an easier path. You'll miss the opportunities, the resources, the moments when abundance was available but didn't match your expectation of what abundance looks like. If you believe you're bad with money, you'll act in ways that confirm that belief, not because you're actually bad with money, but because your brain is trying to maintain consistency between your self-concept and your behavior. We're not trying to prove ourselves right or wrong. We're trying to maintain coherence. And coherence, in this context, is the enemy of change. There's a concept in psychology called cognitive dissonance, the discomfort we feel when our beliefs and behaviors don't align. Most people try to change the behavior and keep the belief intact. They try to save money while believing they're bad with money. They try to earn more while believing they don't deserve it. And the dissonance becomes unbearable, so they snap back to the behavior that matches the belief. Not because they lack willpower, but because the belief is the foundation and the behavior is the structure built on top of it. You can't change the structure without changing the foundation. The question then becomes, how do we change the foundation? How do we rewrite a story that's been running for decades, that feels as fundamental to our identity as our own name? This is where most advice fails. It tells you to think positive. It tells you to affirm abundance. It tells you to act as if. And all of that crashes against the weight of your actual belief system like waves against a seawall. Real change doesn't happen through forced positivity. It happens through honest interrogation. You have to be willing to sit with the uncomfortable truth of what you actually believe, not what you wish you believed or what you think you should believe. This requires a kind of brutal self-honesty that most people avoid because it feels like failure. But it's not failure, it's archaeology. You're digging up artifacts from your past to understand how they're shaping your present. Start with a simple exercise. Complete this sentence. Money is. Don't think about it, just let your mind finish the sentence. Money is hard. Money is freedom. Money is corrupt. Money is safety. Money is stress. Whatever comes up first, that's your operating belief. That's the script running in the background of every financial decision you make. Now ask yourself, where did that belief come from? Not in a vague, general sense. Be specific. Was there a moment, a conversation, an event that taught you that money is whatever you believe it to be? Maybe your father lost his job and the family fell apart, teaching you that money equals security and without it, everything crumbles. Maybe you watched your mother scrimp and save and never enjoy her life, teaching you that money requires sacrifice and suffering. Maybe you saw someone you loved change when they got wealthy, teaching you that money corrupts character. These aren't just memories, they're the source code, and until you examine them, you're running someone else's program in your own life. Here's what I want you to understand. That belief made sense at the time. It was adaptive. It helped you navigate the world as you understood it then. But you're not in that world anymore. You're not the child watching your parents struggle. You're not the teenager who couldn't afford what your peers had. You're an adult with agency, with choices, with the capacity to create new patterns. But you're still running the old program because no one taught you that you could write a new one. Abraham Maslow said that in any given moment we have two options: to step forward into growth or step back into safety. Every time you make a financial decision based on your old money story, you're stepping back into safety. You're choosing the familiar discomfort over the unfamiliar possibility. And I get it. The familiar discomfort is predictable. You know how to manage it. The unfamiliar possibility is terrifying because you don't know if you're capable of handling it. But here's the thing about stepping into growth. You don't need to know if you're capable. You need to be willing to find out. And that willingness starts with recognizing that your current financial reality is not a reflection of your worth or your capability. It's a reflection of your beliefs. Change the beliefs, and the reality shifts to match. Let me give you something practical. Something you can do today that will begin the rewiring process. I want you to track your money thoughts for 1 week. Not your money behavior, your money thoughts. Every time you think about money, whether it's seeing a price tag, paying a bill, checking your account, or imagining a future purchase, write down the thought that accompanies it. Don't judge it. Don't try to change it. Just observe it. What you're doing is making the unconscious conscious. You're shining a light on the automatic thoughts that have been directing your financial life without your awareness. And once you see them, once you recognize them as thoughts rather than facts, they lose some of their power. You create that space that Frankl talked about, the space between stimulus and response where choice lives. After a week, look at what you've collected. You'll see patterns. You'll see themes. You'll see the same beliefs showing up in different contexts, like a song played in different keys but with the same melody. This is your money script. This is what you're working with. Now, and this is crucial, you don't try to replace those thoughts with positive affirmations. You don't try to force yourself to believe something you don't believe. That's spiritual bypassing, and it doesn't work. Instead, you question the thoughts. You investigate them. Is this thought actually true? Is it true in all contexts? Is it true right now? What evidence do I have for it? What evidence contradicts it? Byron Katie built an entire methodology around 4 questions. Is it true? Can you absolutely know it's true? How do you react when you believe that thought? Who would you be without that thought? These questions, applied to your money beliefs, are dynamite. They don't give you new beliefs. They dismantle the old ones, and in the space that's left, something more true can emerge. Let's say your thought is, "I'll never have enough." You've been thinking this for years. It feels true. It feels like a fact about your life. But is it true? Can you absolutely know it's true? How do you react when you believe that thought? You hoard. You stress. You avoid opportunities because they might require investment. You play small. You undercharge. You oversave to the point of not living. And who would you be without that thought? You'd be someone who makes decisions based on current reality rather than anticipated scarcity. You'd be someone who invests in growth. You'd be someone who lives fully while also planning wisely. This isn't about pretending you have unlimited resources. It's about recognizing that the thought, "I'll never have enough," is not a fact. It's a prediction based on old data, and it's running your life in ways that make the prediction self-fulfilling. Now we go deeper, because knowing your money script isn't enough. You also need to understand your money behavior patterns, the actions that flow from those beliefs without conscious thought. These patterns are so automatic that they feel like personality traits. I'm just not good with money. I'm a spender. I'm cheap. But they're not personality traits. They're habits built on beliefs, and habits can be changed once you understand their structure. There are generally 3 money behavior patterns that most people fall into, and understanding which one drives you is essential to rewiring your relationship with wealth. The first is the avoider. This is someone who doesn't look at their bank account, doesn't open bills, doesn't think about money until they're forced to. The avoider's core belief is usually that money is overwhelming or dangerous, and avoidance is a protection mechanism. If I don't look at it, I don't have to feel the anxiety it creates. The second is the worshipper. This is someone whose entire sense of security and self-worth is tied to their net worth. They check their accounts obsessively. They measure their success by financial metrics. They sacrifice present enjoyment for future security that never quite feels secure enough. The worshipper's core belief is that money equals safety, and without constant vigilance, that safety will disappear. The third is the rebel. This is someone who spends impulsively, rejects traditional financial wisdom, and often sabotages their own financial progress. The rebel's core belief is usually that money represents control or restriction, and spending is an act of freedom or self-expression. It's a way of asserting autonomy against a system that feels oppressive. Most of us are some combination of these, shifting between them depending on context or stress level. But one usually dominates, and recognizing your dominant pattern is the first step in consciously choosing a different response. If you're an avoider, your work is about building tolerance for financial reality. Not overnight, but gradually. Start with something small. Look at your account once a week. Don't judge what you see. Just look. Build the capacity to be present with your financial situation without falling into shame or panic. The goal isn't to fix everything immediately. The goal is to stop running from the truth of where you are. If you're a worshiper, your work is about separating your worth from your wealth. This is delicate because the culture reinforces the connection constantly. But your value as a human being has nothing to do with your bank balance. Nothing. And until you internalize that, you'll never feel secure no matter how much you accumulate. Your goal is to practice spending on experiences and relationships without guilt, to find security in something other than numbers on a screen. If you're a rebel, your work is about understanding that true freedom isn't found in opposition to structure. It's found in conscious choice. You're not free when you're spending to prove a point or to escape a feeling. You're free when you're making decisions based on your actual values rather than as a reaction against perceived control. Your goal is to create a financial structure that serves your life rather than restricts it, one that you design rather than one imposed on you. And here's what ties all of this together. The best money advice you'll ever hear is that your financial life will never exceed your self-concept. If you believe you're someone who struggles with money, you'll find ways to struggle even when circumstances improve. If you believe you're someone who's always behind, you'll create situations that keep you behind. If you believe you don't deserve wealth, you'll unconsciously reject opportunities or sabotage success when it arrives. This isn't mystical thinking. This is neuroscience. Your brain's primary function is to keep you alive, and it does that by making your external reality match your internal expectations. When something doesn't match, when you experience success that contradicts your self-concept of being a failure, your brain experiences it as a threat and works to restore the familiar pattern. Not because your brain wants you to fail, but because your brain wants you to be consistent. So the deepest work isn't about money at all. It's about identity. Who do you believe you are in relation to wealth? Are you someone who creates it or chases it? Are you someone who manages it or is controlled by it? Are you someone who deserves it or is lucky to have it? These questions matter more than any financial strategy because they determine which strategies you'll actually implement and which you'll abandon when they start to work. Nathaniel Branden wrote that self-esteem is the reputation we have with ourselves. And our financial behavior is one of the clearest indicators of that reputation. When we underprice our services, we're saying we don't trust others to see our value. When we overspend beyond our means, we're saying we don't trust ourselves to feel satisfied with what we have. When we avoid managing our money, we're saying we don't trust our ability to handle complexity. All of this can change, but it doesn't change through more information. We have plenty of information about how to manage money. It changes through transformation of the self-concept that's been running the show. And that transformation happens through repeated, conscious choice. Every time you make a financial decision that aligns with who you want to be rather than who you've been, you're building new neural pathways. You're writing a new story. You're creating evidence for a different belief. At first, it feels fake. It feels like you're pretending. That's normal. You're acting in a way that contradicts your current identity, and your brain is screaming that this isn't who you are. But if you persist, if you keep making the choice that aligns with your desired identity rather than your historical identity, something shifts. The new behavior starts to feel less foreign. The new identity starts to feel more true. And eventually, your self-concept updates to match your behavior instead of your behavior snapping back to match your self-concept. Let's bring this home with something you can implement immediately, something that bridges the gap between insight and action. Because understanding your money script is valuable, but understanding without application is just intellectual entertainment. We're not here for entertainment. We're here for transformation. The first practical step is what I call the financial identity statement. This isn't an affirmation. It's not, "I am wealthy," when you're drowning in debt. It's a statement of who you're becoming, rooted in truth but oriented toward growth. It might sound like, "I'm someone who's learning to make conscious financial decisions based on my values rather than my fears." Or, "I'm someone who's building a healthier relationship with money by addressing the beliefs that have held me back." These statements are true right now, in this moment, because you're doing the work by reading this, by reflecting, by being willing to look at the parts of your financial life you've been avoiding. Write your financial identity statement. Put it somewhere you'll see it daily, not as a magic incantation, but as a reminder of the direction you're moving. Because transformation isn't a single moment of insight. It's 1,000 small choices that compound over time into a completely different life. The second step is what I call values-based budgeting. This is different from traditional budgeting because it doesn't start with restriction. It starts with clarity. What do you actually value? Not what you think you should value, not what financial gurus say you should value, but what genuinely matters to you. Is it security, freedom, experiences, creativity, relationships, legacy? Get specific. Write it down. Rank it. Now look at your spending from the last month. Does it align with your stated values? If security is your top value but you're carrying high interest debt, there's a misalignment. If experiences are your top value but you're saving every penny and never traveling, there's a misalignment. If relationships are your top value but you won't invest in quality time with people because you're always working for more money, there's a misalignment. The goal here isn't judgment. It's information. You're gathering data about the gap between who you say you want to be and how you're actually living. And that gap is where the work happens. You start making small adjustments, redirecting money toward what actually matters to you. Not all at once, not perfectly, but consistently, consciously, incrementally. The third step is building what psychologists call stress tolerance around money. Most of our worst financial decisions happen when we're emotionally dysregulated. We're anxious, so we avoid. We're stressed, so we overspend for relief. We're excited, so we make impulsive investments. The ability to stay present and clear-headed when you're experiencing financial stress is perhaps the most valuable skill you can develop. This isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about increasing your capacity to feel difficult emotions without immediately acting to make them go away. When you check your account and feel that spike of anxiety, can you sit with it for 60 seconds before doing anything? Can you let it be there without numbing it or fixing it or running from it? That 60 seconds of tolerance creates space for a conscious choice instead of an automatic reaction. Practice this in low-stakes situations first. Feel the discomfort of saying no to a purchase you don't really need. Feel the vulnerability of asking for what you're worth. Feel the uncertainty of investing in something that might not work out. Each time you tolerate the discomfort without collapsing into old patterns, you're strengthening your capacity for conscious financial decision-making. The fourth step is surrounding yourself with a different money conversation. The people around you, the content you consume, the environment you inhabit, all of it is either reinforcing your old money story or supporting your new one. If everyone around you complains about money, reinforces scarcity beliefs, and makes being broke into an identity, it's going to be exponentially harder for you to shift. Not impossible, but harder. Find people who have healthy relationships with money. Not necessarily people who have the most money, but people who are conscious about it, who talk about it without shame or bravado, who make decisions from empowerment rather than fear. Read books that challenge your assumptions. Listen to conversations that expand your sense of what's possible. Curate your environment deliberately because you're not just fighting your internal programming. You're swimming against a cultural current of financial dysfunction, and you need support for that. And finally, the fifth step is celebrating progress instead of fixating on perfection. You're going to mess up. You're going to make impulsive purchases. You're going to fall back into old patterns. That's not failure. That's part of the process. What matters is that you notice it, you understand why it happened, and you make a different choice next time. Each moment of awareness is a victory. Each conscious decision, even if it's not perfect, is progress. The best money advice you'll ever hear isn't a hack or a strategy or a secret investment that wealthy people don't want you to know about. It's this: your financial life is a reflection of your internal world, and until you change the internal world, the external world will keep producing the same results. Change your beliefs, change your identity, change your relationship with yourself, and your relationship with money will transform as a natural consequence. This isn't fast, this isn't easy, but it's real, and it's available to you right now, in this moment, with whatever resources you currently have. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect circumstances. You just need willingness. Willingness to see what's true, even when it's uncomfortable. Willingness to question what you've always believed. Willingness to become someone different than who you've been. We're all walking this path together, fumbling towards something better, making mistakes and learning and trying again. If this resonated with you, subscribe. The work we do here isn't about quick fixes or surface solutions. It's about fundamental transformation, one insight at a time, one choice at a time, one belief at a time. Your financial future isn't written yet. It's being written right now, in this moment, by the person you're choosing to become. Make it a story worth living.